Hello and welcome to FtLoC, where the cars are fast and the microphones are nicely oversized. Thank you for joining us. We'll be going over everything in the world of Carfection, but first it's up to me to introduce my FtLoC friend, Mr. Henry Catchpole.
Hello.
Yes, joining me as usual. I say as usual, but it feels like it's been a while since the two of us have been in the studio together.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
We'll be here talking about all the great stuff that's been on the channel, stuff that's coming up. We'll be talking about the motorsport news, including a cameo from our video producer Charlie, who was at Rally Finland this weekend, and we'll be talking about that.
Not jealous at all.
Not jealous at all. But we've been to a couple of car shows over the weekend as well, and we'll be filling you in on some of that. But first, I think I want to remind you to follow us on all of the social networks. Of course, it's great that you're watching this here on YouTube, but we're active everywhere. Look for us, Carfection on Facebook. We have some content that only lives on there. And follow us on Instagram at Carfection Films. And on Twitter, we are at Carfection. And with that, into the news, I think.
Yes, I think so.
I've talked for quite long enough. What do we have on the news front, Mr. Henry Catchpole, that you want to talk about?
Perhaps start with Lamborghini, shall we?
Yeah, go for it.
Lamborghini, the SVJ, for Jota or Yota, depending how you pronounce it.
Yota.
Exactly, which has set a time around the Nürburgring. And the question is, does anybody care after the Porsche 919 tribute?
It's another week, another lap time. And we were talking about this, how there are different classifications of it. I mean, you could probably, for every car, you could carve out a specific niche that car could be the quickest at, you know?
Yeah, it's simply the production car lap record that they've been going for. So it's taken it away from the GT2 RS.
That was quick. It didn't feel that stood for very long.
No. So 6 minutes, 44.97 seconds is the lap time set by Marco Mappelli. I hope I got his name right. Who also did the lap, I think, in the SV, which is a very cool lap if you've never seen that. It's the tyres go off halfway through, so it gets very, very oversteery for the second half of that lap. He's certainly hustling it. He is using all of the curbing in places, and it looks like much more of an effort than the GT2 RS lap did, which looked actually pretty smooth by comparison, really. But yeah, I suppose it's made up its time probably principally through the fact that it's four-wheel drive. And the fact that it just gets out of corners that much more quickly and can be driven that bit more aggressively. It brings us on to, we've got other supercar news. There's a new supercar.
Yes.
It's called the Milan Automotive Red.
And I have no idea what you're talking about. So
well, there you go.
It's
from an Austrian company, which is supposedly
known for its cars.
Well, I was a bit like, hang on a minute, you've got an Austrian company, and apparently it's designed to show what Austrian companies are capable of.
Yeah.
But it's called Milan Automotive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's the deal? Anyway, it turns out Milan is actually German for kite, as in the bird, and therefore red
is
kite.
Is it really?
Yes. Which we see lots of, particularly up that sort of M40 corridor. Lots of them now. Oh, practically pests, aren't they? They used to be rare. Anyway, I'll give you some facts.
You conservationists.
We'll come back to that in a second. We'll come back to the fact that it's named after a bird in a minute. The facts and figures are, it's got a 6.2 litre quad turbo V8. So again, old school technology. It's rear wheel drive. 1,325 horsepower, 1,032 pounds-foot of torque.
Sorry. 1,325 horsepower.
Yeah, just the 1,325 horsepower.
From a V8.
From a quad turbo V8. Anyway, apparently it can generate 2.6 G laterally. 7-speed dual clutch gearbox, 0-62 miles an hour in 2.47 seconds, 0-125 miles an hour in 5.46 seconds, and a top speed of over 400 kilometers an hour, which is 249 miles an hour. Weighs 1,300 kilos, and everything is pretty much made from carbon, including the wishbones. But my favourite fact about it is, obviously we've discussed, this is all based around being called the red kite. So the drive modes there are three of them: glide, hunt, and attack. Next up, we've got McLaren and the Speed Tail, which is the name they've now given to what was previously known as
BP23.
The very same, yes, which is the three-seater second element. So we've got the Senna, which is the track-focused bit in their Ultimate Series, and then we've got the Speed Tail, is now going to be called, which is the other half, which is, they say it's going to be the most luxurious car they've produced so far, but also the fastest. So it's going to be the fastest car that McLaren Automotive has ever produced. So it will be faster than
more like a GT rather than a track monster like the Senna is.
Exactly.
But,
yes.
but both are.
I'm sure it'll obviously be good in the corners and stuff. But it's.
Are these going to be sold at the same time? So for the first time, we'll see the Ultimate Series having 2 cars on it at the same time.
As far as I can understand it. So I mean, obviously Senna's being produced at the moment. We're seeing there was some down in the car parks at Goodwood, I think. So yes, it's going to have top speed in excess of the McLaren F1s, which is 243 miles an hour. So yeah, only producing 106 examples, and of course it's the 3-seater. It's the central driving position.
Yeah.
Which will be
well, you drove the McLaren F1. What was it like having that central seating position?
Amazing. Yeah, it's fantastic. It does take a little bit of getting, because you're used to allowing for a certain amount of room on one side view or the other.
Weirdly, this car would benefit more from those windows in the doors that the Senna has then, because if you're further away from the apex, surely that's when that extra visibility. But then you were saying that this isn't really a track car. This is more of a luxury, fast GT car. Maybe nice, I was inferring that.
As you say, actually, those windows would be quite nice for the passengers as well. The sort of because they're tucked back at the side, a little bit more visibility out there might be quite nice. So
I'm not too sure about. Because Speedtail, because we've also got like the long tail and like the LT cars, and I guess it all ties into that. But
they're like tits, aren't they? We're back on the birds again.
Okay.
Like blue, great.
Oh right, okay. Sorry, I thought you
long tail tit.
Can we stop saying tits?
Coal. Okay, well, fine. Moving swiftly on from your clearly dirty mind.
Infantile brain.
Let's talk about Bugatti.
Yes, actually, there's 2 bits of news from Bugatti. Do you want to start with yours?
Yeah, mine is the Bugatti Divo.
Divo.
Wow. Which is named after Albert Divo, who won the Targa Florio apparently in 1928 and 1929 for Bugatti.
Well, that tradition that Bugatti has for invoking people from their history.
Yes, yeah. And it is going to cost apparently 4.4 million. And it's a sort of from new coach builder. It's going to be the hashtag is I think built or made for corners, built for corners. That's what
built for corners.
So we can assume it's going to be some sort of. They've obviously got the sport version, which was a little bit lighter and sort of slightly changed.
So this is still a Chiron. Is this still referred to as a Chiron, or is it just referred to as the Bugatti Divo?
I don't know. They've only produced teasers, so a lot of these cars are going to be unveiled at Quail, I think.
So this will be perhaps to the Chiron what the Disco Volante was to the 8C.
Right.
Yeah. So it's essentially the same car, but recoach built.
Yes, I think so. I think it's going to be a little bit more. I think there's going to be more
engineering tweaks.
Yes,
to it as well?
I think so. So whether it's going to be the sort of thing that we might actually come back to the Nürburgring, whether it, finally we might see a Bugatti actually tackle something like that. Maybe this is sort of they've got bored of being thought of only in straight lines, which is something I look at in the video that will be coming out. What was your Bugatti news?
Well, the Chiron has a new option, which sounds like a fairly inconsequential thing, but it is Bugatti's take on the sunroof, where they're now making an option available where you can have 2 glass panels fitted into the ceiling. Now, they don't open, because this is a car that can do over 300 kilometers an hour and would probably rip it off if it could open, and it wouldn't help with aerodynamics. But it's like UVA and UVB proof. It actually adds 2.7 centimeters of headroom, which is quite cool. And Bugatti they claim that it actually makes the roof panel more rigid than just the bodywork it has in place at the moment.
Okay.
I'm not sure how. I'm not sure why they didn't just do this from starters.
Yeah.
But unless you can order it now on your Chiron. They won't tell us how much it costs because they say they don't reveal option costs unless you are interested in buying one for your Chiron. And if your Chiron has already been ordered and signed up for production, you can't now add it.
Right.
But it is. They're calling it the Chiron.
Just get some tin snips out.
Tin snips.
Tin snips, bit of perspex.
So it's been quite a busy week actually for supercar news. If you want to stay up to date with all the news across all levels of automotive world, I can wholeheartedly recommend that you check out our sister site, Roadshow, which you can find at theroadshow.com, where we often contribute articles. All our videos also plug into that website there. Just go to theroadshow.com and they have news updates every single day of the week. So please go and check that out. Now, it's been, as ever, a busy week with lots of stuff coming up onto the site, and you will be watching this on the Saturday and on the previous Wednesday, which for us is actually tomorrow, but for you will have been a couple of days ago. We will have put out our film on the Aston Martin DBS Superleggera.
Yes.
Which you drove.
I did.
And by the time you see this, the embargo will have lifted. So,
and it's a very lovely film. You should go and have a look if you haven't. Sort of, please. Obviously, I'm going to say that.
We'll have some clips up now so people can actually have a look.
Charlie did a fantastic job of editing this, and it's really
and filming it. I mean, you were in a great location.
Yeah, so two lovely locations actually.
That's a big part of the film actually. So tell us what part of the world you were actually in.
So we were on the border between Germany and Austria, right down in the sort of the southeastern tip of Germany, near Berchtesgaden, near the Eagle's Nest, and there's an amazing toll road there. And then we got up early the following morning because a road called Grossglockner is not very far away from there. I mean, one tip, if you are going to go to the Grossglockner, get up early. It's a bit like going to the Stelvio, which I went to recently as well. It's so worth getting up early in the morning, or going there later in the evening, but just avoid that middle of the day. It might seem like a real pain to drag yourself out of bed, at 4:30 to get there for 5 in the morning, but do it, because by 9, 10 o'clock, done.
I have had an equally interesting, not quite maybe as epic as the Grossglockner Pass in an Aston Martin DTS Superleggera, but I took an Audi TTS to, I guess it's spiritual home on the Isle of Man. The TT, the original Audi TT, and obviously each subsequent car has been named after the Isle of Man TT, the tourist trophy. The Isle of Man famously has de-restricted roads, so wherever it's the national speed limit symbol, there is actually no speed limit, so you can drive as fast as you want. And taking a car up there is interesting, but what's more, we had the advantage of Audi somehow being able to negotiate with the local government to close off a 20-kilometer stretch, knowing that nothing was coming the other way. It gave you the kind of freedom to just kind of go out and push the car. And the TTS is modestly powered. It's not it's not an Aston Martin DBS. It's with 302 brake, just under 300 pounds-feet of torque. So it's sporty enough to get up to good speed, but it actually means you can use it. Just quickly, I wanted to touch on Donkervoort, because we'd done a film a while ago on the history of Donkervoort, and we'd kind of paid a little bit of lip service to the D8 GTO RS because we knew we had a full film of that coming up, which is now out. And actually since then Donkervoort have announced the GTO 40, the 40th anniversary, which is the upcoming faster version. But you drove the GTO RS, which at the time was, and still is before the other one comes out, the fastest road car that they've ever done, the most powerful one. What did you make of it, this Dutch incarnation of what a futuristic Lotus 7 could look like? Well,
I mean, futuristic was certainly a word. You walk up to it and you think this is going to be, it's very advanced, it's got lots of carbon fibre in it, and then actually the more you drive it, or you get into it and you discover it's still got tubular chassis underneath the carbon fibre, and it's got a 5-speed manual gearbox, and it's got no assistance on the brakes or the steering, so it suddenly actually becomes certainly a very physical car to drive. And it was quite reassuring, actually. Sort of, I think the headline was something like reassuringly hardcore, and it is a bit like that. Sort of in this world where we have got so much more assistance with drivers' cars, this was very much lots of power, but not a lot of assistance. Certainly not the one we drove, because it was a prototype. Their sort of test car as well, so all the traction control stuff was not working. We've had a couple of car events that we went to. Going backwards, starting with Lufgekult. You were there on Sunday. I was, yes. Tell us about Lufgekult. Lufgekult was the first time it had been in the UK. And describe to the viewers what it is if they're not aware. Luftgekühlt is a celebration of all things Porsche that are air-cooled. So all the water-cooled, the later water-cooled 911s, they're out. They were left to be parked outside the venue. All the kettles, as they get called, were parked outside. Luftgekühlt being German for air-cooled. Yeah. If you hadn't figured that out. As opposed to Wassergekühlt. Yeah. I didn't know what to expect at all. I'd seen the events they were always held out in California before, and they look very cool, but I just assumed it's going to be a collection of some cool cars in a relatively nice location. But the way, and hopefully we've captured this in the film that will come out at some point in the next few weeks, is it's properly curated. And Jeff Svort, who some people may know from his antics on Pikes Peak, is also as DOP, and he places the cars with real sort of thought and care, and it's Bicester Heritage, which is where it was, is a perfect place for that. So yeah, just some cool cars.
And we'll have a video from the event with Henry coming to the channel very, very soon. That was Sunday. Same weekend, and we went on Friday, was Carfest North up in Cheshire.
Yep.
Yes, that's right.
Yes.
Sorry, my mind just abandoned me there for a second. Which is the event organised by Chris Evans, who of BBC Radio 2 fame, and for those of you who aren't in the UK, former presenter on Top Gear, briefly.
And also prolific car collector. I mean, he had
a prolific car collector, a very wealthy car collector. Yeah, well, we were at the show and having a look around together, and we had the chance to sit down and have a chat about what we saw, which I think we can cut to now. We're here at Carfest North, which today is Friday the 27th, which is a week on from when you're watching this, but yes, if you were lucky enough to come down this weekend to Carfest up in the north of England, you'll have been aware of how hot it is. It is swelteringly warm. We are still in the midst of a heat wave here in the UK, and I'm sure that by the time you see this, the footage in the studio, which future Drew and Henry are going to record, we will have hopefully recovered and maybe the weather's broken, but for now it's still swelteringly hot. Yeah. Warm. Anyway, but what Carfest has offered us is the opportunity to see some great cars and see some great sights. So there's been a lot of variety here in terms of cars. Let's jump straight in. What have been some of the highlights of the cars that you've seen here today?
So I think one of my highlights was it was a rally car, fairly obviously. 1997 Colin McRae Subaru Impreza WRC car, so the very first generation of WRC cars that year. And I was lucky enough to drive what was the sort of the prototype of that a while ago, and there's something so cool about it. Those two-door Imprezas. With the proper sort of big arches and the big wing on the back, and they've still got an H-pattern manual gearbox in it, dog box. It's so the way that flicks around the gate, and the gate feels like it's sort of like a sort of matchbox size in terms of just how close.
This is late 90s.
Late 90s.
Still had an H-pattern gearbox. F1 had got rid of that about 5 years earlier, probably.
Exactly, yes, at least so.
Yeah, that's especially nice when it's not just a car, but the actual owner's history behind it. That all adds up to it. There are some great supercars here dotted around, but when there's a personal history attached to it like that, it makes all the difference. One of the cars that was a highlight for me to see was a C1 Corvette. And kind of C2s, C3s get a lot of attention, mainly because they were the cars that kind of were the real flashy first incarnation of like the Stingray, when the Corvette became the Stingray, and it has the shape, and if you look from the C2 through to the C7 you see an evolution. But the C1, the original Corvette, the mid-50s Corvette, looks completely different, and when you're standing next to one you just realize how beautiful that car is and how iconic of the era. You were pointing out like the exhaust placement and how designers clearly had such a huge influence over how a car could look, because they're in a completely bizarre place in the rear wheel arch, but there were so many nice touches, how the bonnet stretches into the cabin and the windshield's placed on top, and how you were noticing the chrome trimmer on the back of the seats. So yeah, fun has been had at Carfest North, and later in the area there will be a Carfest South, and we'll put some details about that in the description if you fancy coming along to that.
It's all for a good cause as well, isn't it?
All for a good cause, raising money for children in need, which if you're from the UK, I certainly don't need to explain to you what that is. All excellent, and I can wholeheartedly say this looks like it would be a brilliant day out for the family. Very warm though, bring a hat, sunscreen. Protect yourself, people. Anyway, from a sweltering Ballsworth Castle back to future Henry and future Drew in the studio. So there you have it. That was us in a very sweaty little media room.
It's so hot.
So on to the motorsport news. I quickly wanted to talk about Formula One. There's been a couple of races since we last spoke. There was the German Grand Prix where we saw a very uncharacteristic mistake from Seb Vettel, unprovoked, outbraking himself going into a turn.
It looks so innocuous, didn't it? But it
shows you, four-time world champion, it can happen to anyone. Leading the race under no pressure.
Yep.
Just came off, stuck in the gravel, and I think he made his feelings about that known in quite some detail, which allowed Lewis, after two very difficult races in a row, to leapfrog and take the lead. And then he extended the lead this weekend by winning at the Hungarian Grand Prix. Again, Seb Vettel not winning down to a slow pit stop. It was 4.2 seconds. Now, in today's Formula One, when Williams a couple of years ago did a 1.8 second stop, 4.2 is significantly longer. But that's the size of the margins that they're now working to, where so many races are now won and lost at the pit stop.
Yeah, and I think sort of because we saw towards the end of the race, I mean, Bottas eventually sort of got passed by various people because his tyres were completely shot. But until that point, he was running significantly off the pace, but they just couldn't get past.
No.
So that shows how important the pit stops were to try and leapfrog, because that was seemingly the only way you were actually going to get past a car. But yeah, for me, the most impressive thing of the weekend was actually not in the race, but again in qualifying. It was another stellar qualifying lap from Hamilton in the rain.
I mean, again, he proves what he can actually do with that car, and probably it was the rain that actually helped him.
Oh yeah, they wouldn't have. Ferrari should have walked away with that if it had tried. But
Lewis Hamilton now has the largest margin in the Drivers' Series that anyone's had all season.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's been really tight up to this point. Seb's DNF last race in Germany set them on that course, and then the extra point difference from the race this weekend has pushed it over the edge. So but anything can happen. But moving on to rally now, not only do I not know much about rally, we actually have someone else on the team who attended it, in the fact that Charlie went to Rally Finland. So how about I swap out with him so you two can talk about the rallying?
Seems fair enough. So Charlie, Rally Finland, you got to go. I'm not at all jealous. And you brought me back a lovely present from Toyota Gazoo Racing, which is presumably who you were there with.
I was.
You brought me back some wet wipes.
Actually, yes. You can have this as well.
Oh, well, hang on a minute. Oh,
Toyota Gazoo Racing bandana.
Oh, yes. It's a sort of.
You're going to put it on now?
Think I should?
Yeah.
What, just to make it feel. Is that good? So that's enough of that. Well, thank you for those thoughtful gifts.
You're welcome.
Onto the rally itself. How was it? What did you? Because you'd not been to a rally before.
No, I've never been to a rally. First rally. I didn't really know much about rally. I tried to do a bit of research before I went, just so I didn't go in completely blind. But it was really cool. Yeah. Really cool experience.
What were the things that sort of, because you got to go obviously stand out on some of the stages.
Yeah. I think the main thing is probably you get so close to it in the action, sometimes a bit too close, as I found out with my phone cracking my screen, which I actually have the photos of. I don't know, you haven't seen those, have you? It was quite funny.
You were basically trying to take a selfie.
I took a selfie round a corner, and they were kicking up stones. I thought, this is quite cool actually, because all the dust comes up behind you. So I decided to try and do a burst mode on my phone, and it went very wrong. And the stone flew past the side of my head straight into my camera on my phone and cracked my screen. So this is sort of as it happened. So there's the car.
Okay, so there's you looking all cool,
yeah,
calm and
really
collected.
Cool. Sunglasses on, cap on.
Yeah.
There's the dust.
Odd face.
Dust.
Yep.
And there's the cracked screen there.
Oh, tremendous.
And there's my reaction to realising I just cracked my screen.
Oh, basically is the reaction. So,
but I mean, it was worth it, because you can't, I don't know, you can get close in other motorsports, but it's, I don't know, you feel more, it's more dangerous. And
it's more of an adventure, isn't it? Going out into the forests and,
you walk,
and seeing cars,
kilometre
hearing them coming
so.
for a while and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. And what did you think of the cars themselves? Because we've got these new, they've been called 2017 cars because that's the year that they came in. Modern WRC gets a lot of criticism for sort of the cars being perhaps they're not coupes, they're obviously based on hatchbacks. What did you think of the cars themselves? Did they look cool? Did they look fast?
I think they looked cool. I think my favourite was the Fiesta.
Okay.
I think that looks really cool, and they still sound amazing. I mean, listening to them go from their road mode into stage mode, and just the noise is just unbelievable. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's and obviously for those that missed it, Optanic won the rally overall, which was sort of expected because the Toyota Gazoo Racing are based out in Finland. I mean, they drove from their own service park, or from their own headquarters to the service park. Yes, exactly. And there's the reason that they thought they were going to win, or had a good chance of winning, why they flew people like your good self out there to watch, is because the rules say that you're allowed to test on any roads within a 50-kilometre radius of your headquarters. And so obviously they can test on all these roads. So they should know exactly what's coming. So the other news, I suppose, is the fact that Mads Osberg made the best of his road position, and the Citroen C3's had some new front geometry on that, which seems to work pretty well. And he got second overall, which was a great result for him. Good stuff. Glad you enjoyed it.
Yep.
That's it for today's episode. I just wanted to say thank you very much for watching all the way to the end. We do think that everyone who does watch FtLoC all the way to the end is our best type of fan. So that's you. Thank you. Remember to be subscribed to the podcast. Carfection for the Love of Cars podcast is every other week. When this goes out is the longer extended version, audio only, of the discussion that we've just had. And then the weeks in between is some unique content that you can only get on the audio podcast. So go wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Google, Stitcher, wherever, do a search for Carfection for the Love of Cars. That whole title, big orange square logo, you can't miss it. Subscribe there to get some really tasty extra Carfection treats you can get nowhere else. Follow us on Twitter at Carfection, on Instagram at Carfection Films, find us on Facebook, subscribe to the YouTube channel and hit the bell icon. Even if you are subscribed, if you don't hit that bell icon for some reason, you don't get notified when we put new films out. Don't know, complain to Google, but for now just hit that bell icon. And all that leaves me to say is thank you for watching. Thank you for joining me again, Henry.
Thank you very much, Drew.
And we'll see you next time. Twice it fired up, and
I'm trying to carry a load of sandwiches and coffee. Do you think they're all for him?
Well, he's a big man.